Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of voice of radio. So today, we need to talk about Mimikyu V. Yeah, I'm still a little bit croaky. My apologies. We do our best, ladies and gentlemen. We do our best. Now, the thing is, we know we're getting Mimikyu V. Now, I saw this somewhere, and I could not for the life of me remember where I saw it. But the good news is the lovely Matthew Arrive, Immunity over on Twitter, did hook me up with the details. And what we need to do is we need to go and look at the sell sheet for the upcoming Battle Styles expansion. And if we have a look at the sell sheet, there is a little description of the set that reads: be a titan full of power, or strike with impossible speed. It all depends on your martial mastery. Channel the power of Pokémon V like Mimikyu V, Tyranitar V, Empoleon V, and more. Oh. So we are explicitly told that in Battle Styles we are getting a Mimikyu V. The thing is, we don't know anything about Mimikyu V. This is not a Pokemon which has gone and been revealed in Japan. We've not seen any teasers for it. We have been told it's coming, but that is the most we can say. So it's time to do what we haven't done for a little while. It's time to get our prediction on and do a full-on prediction video looking at the kind of things this is likely to do. And then when this is inevitably revealed in a few weeks' time, we can come back and look and see how accurate we were. How lovely. Now, the thing we can say about Mimikyu with absolute certainty is that it is going to be a psychic type. Because you see, we have had some fairy Mimikyu. There was a promo fairy Mimikyu, and there was the Mimikyu from Team Up, which was fairy, as well as Mimikyu GX, which was a fairy type. But the thing we can say with absolute certainty is it's going to be a psychic type, because Pokemon have changed the typings now in the TCG since Sword and Shield came in, and fairy Pokemon now come in as psychic Pokemon. Take a look at Clefable, if you don't believe me. And that means that we can say with absolute certainty it is going to be a psychic type. Which means it's also going to have a weakness to metal, again using Clefable as an example. We know that Clefable is weak to metal because it's fairy. Fairy now are psychic with weakness to metal, so we can say that with absolute certainty. If we want to get into less interesting things like retreat cost, we can say with absolute certainty it's going to have a retreat cost of 1. Because we've had like 7 Mimikyu so far, and they've all had a retreat cost of 1. Now, in terms of HP, this is where things get a little bit interesting, because a lot of people seem to have forgotten, or just not know to begin with, but there were actually 2 Mimikyu GXs. We just never got one. One ended up being a Japan exclusive. It was in a set which was only released in Japan, had artwork from the anime, etc. But there were 2 Mimikyu GX. But if we look at both Mimikyu GX side by side, we can see that they've got 170 HP, which is low for a Pokemon GX. So assume that Mimikyu V is going to have low HP for a Pokemon V, which comes in at 180. So the basics are probably a little bit easy, but it's going to be psychic type, weakness to metal, retreat cost of 1, 180 HP, and, well, it's probably not going to have a resistance. Sorry. To be fair, it might not have a weakness to metal, because if it's a fairy type, it might, but we've had plenty of Mimikyu that aren't weak. In fact, all but one. And then the Mimikyu from Darkness Ablaze was weak to darkness, being a psychic Pokemon. So it could actually have no weakness, darkness weakness, or metal weakness. And there's a chance I spoke entirely too soon about weakness. Go Ghost Pokemon. We did see that the most recent Mimikyu in Darkness Ablaze did have a resistance to fighting, as did the GX, which also had a weakness to darkness for what it's worth. But we've not actually seen resistance on the others, so it may or may not have a resistance to fighting. Oh, reckless speculation gets fun. So, what is Mimikyu actually going to do? And the answer is probably a bunch. You see, there are 2 things that Mimikyu do well, and that is disruption and copying. Now, obviously, the copying should be a little bit of a given. The name is literally Mimikyu. But if we take a look through the history of the Mimikyu cards, we really can see a proper trend here for disrupting you and for impersonation. So we have a look at some of these disruption cards. I mean, the most recent Mimikyu is one from Darkness Ablaze. It's got the ability Heal Jamming. Your opponent's bench Pokemon cannot be healed. Incidentally, I've started occasionally popping one of these into my Excadrill deck, because if I put this in Excadrill, then my opponent can't use Mallow and Lana. They're allowed to heal their active, but they're not allowed to heal their bench. And Mallow and Lana heals after switching to the bench. And it's made my Zacian, Lucario, and Melmetal matchup so much better. I used to lose that matchup when they hit Mallow and Lana at the right time. With a Mimikyu on the bench, if I set up, I kind of win that matchup. So I'm kind of digging that Mimikyu lately. But if we go back a step to Cosmic Eclipse, we had two Mimikyu, one of which had the ability Shadow Box. Pokemon GX that have any damage counters on them have no abilities, which is kind of awesome. Mimikyu GX's GX attack actually was Dream Fear GX. You chose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and they shuffled that and all cards attached to it into their deck, which could be kind of annoying. And if we go back to the first ever Mimikyu that we ever got, that was the one that made its debut back in... Well, it was actually a promo, and for 2 energy, it had Astonish, which would let you choose a random card from your opponent's hand, and they shuffled it back into their deck. Admittedly, not a particularly stunning disruption attack, but a moderately disruptive attack nonetheless. So disruption is something that Mimikyu's been pretty good at. And I'd like another thing along those lines. Certainly both of the Mimikyu with abilities lately have seen a whole bunch of play because they're incredibly disruptive. The one from Cosmic Eclipse just turned off abilities of any Pokemon GX with damage counters on. Really good against stuff like Oricorio, which would sit there turn after turn trying to use the ability. Well, every time you had a Pokemon KO, you get to draw 3 cards, but same kind of deal. Things like Persian GX that let you search for any 2 cards if you had a GX KO'd the previous turn, which is pretty good, to be honest with you. That would be turned off. Whole bunch of good things being turned off by this. But of course, Mimikyu by name, Mimikyu by nature, we've seen a bunch of copying. So the first set Mimikyu we had was one from Guardians Rising, and it had the attack Copycat for 2 energy. If your opponent used a non-GX attack last turn, you copy it. And this saw a whole bunch of play. It saw play in Malamar decks that could accelerate an energy. It saw play in Metagross decks when Metagross was a trendy deck, which was for a little while, because that could accelerate an energy. And essentially any Pokemon that could KO itself, Mimikyu could copy and KO. Interesting to note that that Pokemon did get reprinted, well, verbatim, just with Fairy typing in Team Up, which of course is a little bit ironic because nowadays Fairy would be Psychic. But hey ho. The other Fairy Pokemon we got, the other Fairy Mimikyu I should say, was a promo card. But for 1 Fairy Energy, you shuffle your hand into your deck, then you draw a card for each card in your opponent's hand. It is literally the supporter card Copycat, but as an attack. But again, it's copying, so why not? Seems like fun to me. And then the other Mimikyu from Cosmic Eclipse, because I did tell you that set had 2 Mimikyu. This is the one that had the alternate art with Ace Roller on. Had an attack for 1 colorless energy, which let you discard a supporter card from your hand and use the effect of that card as the effect of this attack. Now, it's called Impersonation and it is a copying attack, but you're kind of copying yourself, so it's not quite as much fun. But you'll notice that Impersonation is a little bit of a setup attack, and Mimic is a little bit of a setup attack, and that Copycat Mimikyu had the attack Filch for a colorless energy that let you draw 2 cards. So Mimikyu also has a little bit of a history as a setup Pokemon. So what can we expect from Mimikyu V? We can expect a Psychic-type Pokemon with low HP, a retreat cost of 1, weakness to either Metal or Darkness or nothing, resistance to either Fighting or nothing, and in terms of attacks, we can expect it to revolve around copying your opponent's attacks, your opponent's number of cards in the hand, etc. Disruption, stopping your opponent doing what they want to do, and quite possibly having a single energy setup attack that lets you draw cards, get going, etc. Because frankly, that's what we see. That's what Mimikyu does. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Mimikyu V is coming, and although we don't know a huge amount, I like looking at old cards, because you see, if you look at enough cards of a particular Pokemon, you start seeing some real strong trends, and I think we've got enough here to make a really good, general, quite wide, but still a pretty good prediction as to exactly what it is that Mimikyu can do, and what it is that Mimikyu V is going to do. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys. I want your predictions. I want to know how much you're excited about Mimikyu, and I want to know what you think it's going to end up doing. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Don't go getting a croaky throat like me just because it's winter, stupid winter. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.